Good morning, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit today about Secretary Rubio's uh, speech at the Munich uh, conference. I wanted to go over the points that he mentioned uh, and discuss them a little bit. Let's clarify a few things here. First, uh, he talked about deindustrialization in West, and I think particularly in US. I think he meant mostly in US that deindustrialization was foolish. That's exactly what he said. So first of all, uh, who said that US deindustrialized? The fact that China has a larger manufacturing than US now doesn't mean that US deindustrialized. US, sure, China is the number one manufacturing manufacturer nation in the world. US is second. US alone, I believe it counts for some 17% of the entire global manufacturing. Also, US manufacturing alone is larger than that of the next three countries combined. That would be high technology nations of Germany, Japan, and South Korea. Right? These are all very high tech countries. They have similar technologies to US and to China. And US manufacturing alone is larger than those three combined. All right. And those three combined, they have I think little less than US population. Now, so my first point is that to say that US deindustrialized is just uh, being a bit dramatic. Okay, so that's that. Now, uh, so that's my first point. Second, I also wanted to point out about Chinese, right? China pulling ahead of US in manufacturing and even in technology, right? Let's see whose fault that is, right? Uh, China, I'm sure you have seen by now the videos of China's New Year gala. They had those robot kung fu show, and then robot show, robots jumping around, all that. Fascinating, amazing capability. Clearly showing that in terms of robotic technology, they are probably ahead of US. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that in a separate video, but if you look at the R&D expenditure in China versus US, if you look at the expenditure over past 20 or 22 years, US has outspent China by almost two, by almost a factor of two. Okay. Even today, as a percentage of GDP, we spend 1.5 times China on R&D, and we have similar GDPs today. So we spend more, much more on R&D, yet they have caught up on a whole bunch of technologies, and they're ahead of us a whole bunch, particularly in the ones that matter today. That would be AI and robotics. Okay. So what does that tell you? Whose fault that is? Is that the fault of average American, or is that the fault of American leadership, American government? Right? I would say China, from looking at these numbers, right? China has spent less, clearly more effectively. They were clearly more focused. Somehow they were, in my opinion, less corrupt in their effort as well, and they pulled ahead of us. Okay, so that's another point when it comes to manufacturing output and R&D and deindustrialization that Secretary Rubio was mentioning. Now, the second point that he mentioned in his speech was about America's European heritage. You know, so the general tone of his speech was kind of appeasing to Europe, and the reason is that uh, after the Greenland saga, Europe showed kind of the political middle finger to US. You can say that, and they were not budged. And we still don't know what kind of deal they made on Greenland. My guess is more of the same deal that we had before, nothing new. That's my guess. And US essentially now is going and appeasing them a little bit, trying to having a softer tone. Particularly after Canadian Prime Minister said this is a rupture, and then Germany, I mean, German's chancellor said this is a rupture, this is a new model. Now, whenever you think of Germany, think of half of Europe. All right, that's the weight that they pull in Europe. Okay, so so all of those scared the U.S. foreign policy administrators a little bit. So that's why he had a softer tone, a kind of appeasing tone. Even at some point in his speech, said that we consider ourselves as Europe's child. So basically, he told Europe that you're our cultural daddy, right? Just like Europeans, they told Trump that you're our daddy when it comes to military spending, right, and our defense. He went to Europe and said, "You're our cultural daddy," right? So that's that. Now he at one point in his speech, when he was talking about this heritage, he pointed out he was trying to sell himself as somebody with European heritage. He mentioned two names. For all we know, they may be made up. He mentioned two names. Apparently, his great grandfathers from his mom and dad's side looks like one from Italy, one from Spain. And he said that 250 years ago, they didn't know that I'm going to be the Secretary of State of U.S. And so on and so forth. Now, brother, your mom and dad, they came from Cuba, okay? Not from Italy, not from Spain. They were born in Cuba and they moved to US from Cuba. If you want to go back hundreds and thousands of years ago, we are all from Adam and Eve. We are all brothers. We are all immigrants there, right? from somewhere in Middle East or North Africa, maybe. I don't know, right? So this kind of baloney that he comes up with, I don't know. And we all know about the lies that he said, in early 2010s. I don't exactly. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what year. He said that my dad, my family, they escaped Cuba from Castro's political suppression and so on and so forth. And then people just looked it up and they figured out that his family moved to the U.S. 2 years before Castro took power. All right. So again, this kind of baloney, I don't appreciate that. So I want to just talk a little bit about all that European heritage from his side. Now, let's look at Europe's response, right, to his speech, and to nowadays to this type of speech that is going on in U.S. Europe's who is that lady? I forgot her name. She's the head of European Union Foreign Affairs, something like that, foreign relations, and she immediately said that these speeches, they are mostly for U.S. domestic consumption. Okay, so at this point they know what's going on, right? They don't care about this, and she also mentioned that that she's coming from a country that ranks second worldwide in freedom of press, and Rubio is coming from a country that ranks, I think 50 years or 40 years, something around 40 in freedom of press, and coming and lecturing us on freedom of press just doesn't sound good, So they're standing up to this kind of nonsense, essentially, right, in Europe. those declarations by President Trump that Europe is dying, Europe's culture is dying. I, as a matter of fact, was in Europe. I was in France early December when when the United States foreign policy, uh, uh, you know, uh, what do you call it? Foreign policy strategy came out. And again, this is supposed to be a document that is, you know, well researched, well studied, well written. It's supposed to, direct the foreign policy for the next few years and so on and so forth. Right? What was in it? I was in France, mind you. I think it came out in on December 5th or something like that. I was in France, early, the first week of December. This came out and said that, oh, Europe is dying, their culture is dying, Europe is going to hurt, but we can't do anything about it. We still have to keep them our allies. I remember laughing and thinking that good thing I'm here, can see their lives, and I see that they are living better than us. Okay, I will make another video on that. I have traveled to quite a few countries. I will talk about how all of these countries have been more livable from what I saw, and I spent time going around in every country that I visit. For example, in France, I was walking between 11 to 14 hours a day, every day, because I'm curious. I like to see their life. I like to see everything. Right. I'm gonna make another video about my international trips, what I have seen, and the conclusion that I have come to, that all of these countries are at the minimum as livable and as United States, and that's why a lot of our citizens, they go over there and retire. They used to go. They started this, couple of, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays, even young people, they leave US and start working over there in other countries, including China, including Turkey, even Oman, Qatar, Turkey, Thailand, of course, very famous. Vietnam, we have all heard of these. Mexico, right? Even young people are moving over there. I'm gonna make another video on that, just that. But as far as this goes, the European response, Europe knows their thing. They know what they are, who they are. A lot of people in Europe, they have visited US. We can't say that the other way around. A lot of people in US have not visited anywhere else in the world. Okay, if any one of you have gone to Europe, if you have stayed in any Airbnb, and or if you have been in touch with any families, any people who live there, if you have been in touch and have seen, you see that in their houses they have these souvenirs from different parts of the world, from Southeast Asia, from South America, from US, and all that, because they all have traveled, particularly Europe. I'm saying particularly New York City. A whole bunch of Europeans, they have come and visit New York, but you can't say that about the Americans. A whole bunch of Americans, they have never been outside of the US, particularly in Europe, right? So again, Europeans, they know what's going on in the US. All right, so they're not buying any of this. These are all for domestic consumption. Now he also mentioned, now just after he was done speaking, I think the moderator only asked him a couple of questions. I think that the most important one was about the U.S.-China meeting. He was asking him about European leaders talking to China and and making new sweet deals with China. And he said that President Trump is also going to China in April, and what's going to happen and so on and so forth. So I just want to shed light on that a little bit. Uh, I think we all can see the outcome of that meeting. I'm sure Trump is going to come and say, "Oh, this was a great meeting. We achieved a lot. And China agreed to this and that, and so on and so forth." Right? And what I think is that one of the points that would be on top of the agenda for this trip is Venezuela's is China's purchase of Venezuelan oil. Okay, I think President Trump is going to offer this to Chinese to buy to continue their purchase, or to basically to resume, essentially, because they stopped it, to resume the purchase of Venezuela's oil in exchange for us reducing a little bit of the tariffs. Okay, that's my expectation. Let's see if my prediction comes true. In a couple of months we'll see that. That's my guess. And and what Rubio said also confirmed what I said in another video about Venezuela and India. That President Trump met with Indian Prime Minister Modi, uh, you know, recently, and about a month, I think, about a couple of weeks after our Venezuela, our capturing of Maduro. And I said in my video at that time that the one thing that happened in this was for U.S. to ask India to resume the purchase of Venezuela's oil. And Secretary Rubio in this session 2 days ago, he mentioned that we had a meeting with India and they agreed not to buy more of Russia's oil. Okay, not to buy more from Russia's oil. Okay, so oil definitely is on top of the agenda over here. Okay, now probably not to buy oil from Russia's oil. Where to buy it then? Right, from Venezuela maybe. Right. Yeah, I mean, so they're not buying it from U.S. More is from Venezuela, right? So so uh, so oil is on top of the agenda again. So at this point, we are going again, as I said, we are going around marketing Venezuela's oil. So imagine that. Uh, and now China, as we have seen before in these talks with President Trump, even the US may take a whole bunch of ridiculous positions and come out and say, oh, we achieved this, we achieved that. China, if you notice, they never come out and ridicule our politicians or basically these deals. And there's a reason for that. The reason is, why interrupt your enemy or rival when they are making a mistake? Right? Okay, right. I leave you guys with that. You have a great day.